Hi, welcome to the Sociology of Work and Technology. This is week 5, where we're going to talk about science and technology perspectives on work and technology, starting with a book chapter from Grint and Woolgar.
So one man isolator, to fat brain stimulator, to cerebral vibrator of our lungs.
This week, Grint and Woolgar present a view of technology as a socially constructed text. Now, in previous weeks, some of the authors we read were concerned with how techniques for organizing work under capitalism produce inequality. Those techniques included bureaucracy, Taylorism, and the use of racism and gender roles to control labor. Grint and Woolgar are focused on a different problem, one related to social theory rather than existing social problems. They're puzzled by the idea of structure and agency. Which better explains behavior? Is it social structure, or is it individual agency? They pose this question to technology. Is technology determined by society, or does technology determine society? The first view, that society determines technology, is largely a social constructivist approach. It's also one that's on full display in the work of, say, Marx, Harry Braverman, even Shoshana Zuboff. In this view, technology is nothing but what society interprets it to be, what it makes it to be. The other view, that technology determines society, is more of a technological determinist view. This is one held by many in the technology industries, and based on some of your responses, it's one that many of you seem to hold, especially when you say things like technology is improving the world, or technology does X, or technology does Y. Now, against both of these points of view, Grint and Woolgar ask us to consider technology as a text. What do they mean by this? Technology? It's a text? Well, technology is built by human beings, and so it's a product of society with all sorts of intended uses and politics built into it. But these uses can't be taken for granted, or as they say, technology does not have a predetermined essence. Even if technology is intended for some particular use, technology must be interpreted by its users. Technology must be, metaphorically speaking, read or interpreted. Now, this metaphor of technology as text is meant to draw lines connecting the process of adopting and using technology with the process by which we, say, read a book or interpret some other text. Books are written with certain intentions, but they're still open to interpretation. In the same way, technologies may be read or interpreted in various ways. Now, as shown in the reading, some interpretations result in the intended uses of the technology, and some interpretations do not. There are certain limitations to our interpretation. Just as there are limits to the sort of openness of a text, there are limits to the openness or interpretation of a technology. As Grint and Woolgar say in the reading, we do not mean to suggest that any reading is possible, let alone that all readings are equally possible. So what shapes our interpretations of technologies? Well, Grint and Woolgar say that the machine is organized in such a way that its purpose is available for interpretation by the user. In other words, you see a technology, and you can kind of fathom a guess as to what it's used for. You can kind of, say, oh, okay, I think that's how it might be used. The way in which you interpret that technology depends in part on its design and in part on the, quote, associations made available within the technology as a text. Now, a lot of the examples they give are of users in computer testing situations. And these examples are instances in which users can't really understand how to use a computer. They can't, based on how it's designed, come up with a interpretation that seems useful. In response, tech designers attempt to guide these users through user manuals, through various warning stickers, various labels on the technology that are intended to redirect users' interpretation to the correct interpretation, which is the one that's desired by technology's designers. Now, you can see this in your life as a consumer, even if you never end up working in a job, which all of you probably will be, you know. When you get a smartphone, for example, you're encouraged to go through a tutorial. Whenever you update your operating system, you get all these things that tell you, let's show you around, show you what's new. These are all examples of scripts, which we'll discuss in the next lecture. These are all examples of scripts that are trying to guide you in certain directions, to shape your interpretation to what the designers of these technologies have deemed to be proper usage. Certain features of your phone might not be intelligible to you until you've had it explained to you how you're supposed to use the object or the device. But still, there's no guarantee that you'll do that. And so there's still a chance for alternate uses or alternate interpretations. This is the kind of stuff that Grint and Woolgar are getting at. Technologies are built with particular users in mind. They are configured for particular imagined versions of a user. In the reading from Grint and Woolgar, they focus on how tech designers expect certain behaviors and certain fluencies or certain competencies, certain soft skills in terms of interpretation. Though Grint and Woolgar don't talk about class, gender, race, or any intersection thereof, it doesn't take much imagination to extend their analysis to include these aspects of social position and say that technologies are often designed with classed, gendered, and racialized users in mind. Can you think of any examples? Thinking about work, even the mundane work of just organizing your calendar, we might ask, why are all the default voices of digital assistants female voices? What do you think? I'd love to hear your opinion down below in the comments. Feel free to do so. And we'll also talk about that a little bit more in the next video this week. Now, the designs of technology and the features of technology are built to suit how users are imagined by the people who design and build technology. That's really what this process described ethnographically in the chapter from Grint and Woolgar. That's really what that describes. Thus, the text of the technology is written or organized in a way that can be interpreted by this imagined version of a user, what they call the configured user. And this differs from the actual real-life user, something shown to great effect in the chapter. Now, this divergence between this configured user and the real user makes it more difficult for people who aren't part of of that imagined user group. Right? The technology is not designed for the wide variety of peoples who might be using the technology, but it's designed for whomever the technology designers, the engineers that make this stuff, imagine. So it's not designed with them in mind, and so it also leaves room for a finite amount of unintended, alternate interpretations that are all based on this same object, same device, right? If you get different kinds of people, they'll interpret the same object slightly differently. So what's all the point of this when we're thinking about the sociology of work and technology? What's the big point here? Well, in contrast to Zuboff and Braverman, Grint and Woolgar are claiming that technology has no essence, it has no intrinsic meaning. It can vary, it can change. The same object can be interpreted in different ways depending on who's using it. Technology is both socially produced, right, as in Zuboff and Braverman, right? They say that technology is produced by capitalists to further their interests, essentially. So that happens, sure, but technology also depends upon the social context in which it's interpreted and used. It's not like you can just give technology to different kinds of people and they'll all immediately know how to use it. And thus, technology in and of itself, in isolation, cannot be said to have an impact or an effect. This is what they mean at the end when they talk about being against essentialism. What they mean here by essence is that there's no single meaning to technology, right? There is no essence or no single meaning to technology. And thus, according to Grint and Woolgar, we cannot speak of technology's impact without also understanding the context in which that impact is understood. Rather than thinking of society producing technology or of technology producing society, Grint and Woolgar imagine the two as entangled and mutually dependent. That makes them really complex and, in my opinion, all the more fascinating. What do you think? Okay, well, next time we're going to talk about this more in relation to gender and technology, and I'm going to further highlight how this point of view from STS scholars differs from both what I would call a managerial rationalist point of view and the more critical labor process point of view. And then we'll get into that a little bit more next time, and I'll see you then. Bye.